Hello, everyone. It's Pam Esquire, also known to you as your law intellect. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the channel. If you have not done so already, please subscribe, like, and share so you can get all the latest updates when it comes to the AME lawsuit. Let's get started. So many of you have asked under my post about the update when it comes to the AME lawsuit. If you have not watched already, please watch part 1 and part 2 so you can get an update on what we are referring to. But just briefly, the AME Church, along with its past director, there were a couple of other defendants on the case as well. They were sued by pastors, elders, bishops, those that were entitled to certain retirement benefits. When they came to collect on those benefits, the money was gone. So to get more information on that, please, please, please go back to the prior videos. Now, we do have a few updates. The case somewhat almost in a sense started over because now there was an amended complaint that was filed, and that was mainly due to the fact that now all these cases are consolidated and it's considered a class action. So because of that, because it's a multi-district litigation case now, instead of having all these multiple complaints in order to basically for judicial economy, not spending money and going all over the United States to do depositions and all the things that entails in a lawsuit, it's all been combined. So now that we have that out the way, let's go to back in July. We did have a preliminary injunction that was filed by the plaintiffs. So let's take a brief look at that. So what you are looking now is the motion for a preliminary injunction. So I'm going to briefly summarize it. As you see, it was filed July 14, 2022. Now the case is named In Re AME Church Employee Retirement and Fund Litigation. All of the cases are now in the Western District of Tennessee, Eastern Division. So if you guys have access to the site, you can pull some of these documents on your own. So a preliminary injunction was filed, and the reasoning is because around March, I believe it was, the AME Church began making some distributions or releasing some of the monies to those that were in retirement status. Now, the caveat behind that is that there was some type of formula that was initiated in order to release the funds or some of the funds, a very small portion of the funds, according to this preliminary injunction, in order to still make sure there were enough funds left in the bank account, but also in order for them to continue their investigation. I presume that these funds were released because there is a lot of litigation going on, and this is called mitigation, where you're trying to mitigate your damages. So we'll go over some of the lines of the preliminary injunction, and you'll see why a preliminary injunction was filed. So let's go down to paragraph 3. Within the last 30 days, plaintiffs began receiving letters with checks from the AME Church. The letter stated that these checks were the result of a new adjusted valuation of each account by AME Church and represented the amount due from the AME Church retirement plan account as a result of your official retirement disassociation from the active ministry of the African Methodist Episcopal Church. There are a number of problems with this. First, AME provided no information about how these, quote, new adjusted valuations, end quote, were made. And those, quote, new adjusted valuations, end quote, are patently wrong because the amounts are far too low. So they started distributing these amounts. However, it's not what was expected from these retirees. It was way lower. But as I said earlier, the reason why they were way lower is because they did a new valuation on what the funds that were available now, and they did a certain percentage and gave it out to each person that was in retirement. But clearly, it's not going to be the amount that they were expecting. Second, this injunction was filed because the letter sent with the checks contained language that the AME Church may later argue constitutes a release or waiver of claims of damages at issue in this case. Specifically, the cover letter states in part, quote, by cashing the check, you acknowledge that a reevaluation of your account balance is forthcoming and that the aforementioned amount is being deducted from the adjusted balance, end quote. The plaintiffs did not request the checks, nor were their counsel made aware by the AME Church's counsel that the checks and cover letters were being sent. There are thousands of people in the punitive classes defined by each of the complaints in the MDL, multi-district level litigation. Only a dozen or so have retained counsel who can advise them about the meaning and impact of this kind of language. Third, by this conduct, the AME Church appears to have further harmed these punitive class members and their investments by sending the unrequested checks. AME Church has involuntarily, quote, cashed out plaintiffs in the amount they contend is too low without allowing plaintiffs to, one, continuously realize returns on their investments, and two, to avoid a tax event by either keeping their money in the retirement plan or rolling it over into a new plan. Worse, even on the inaccurate amounts calculated, the AME Church has deducted 20% for taxes, a tax liability that none of these plan participants should be subject to. And it goes on and on. So essentially, what this complaint is saying is they believed in their eyes that this was the overlay for the underplay. Okay. So you guys sent this money, and back in the day when your credit card company might send you, say you owe $200 and you sign a check, you fill out a check for $100 or something less than the 200 that's owed, and you send it to them and you put paid in full. Like, once you cash this check, then we don't owe you anymore. This is what the concerns of plaintiff's attorney was, that when you guys started sending these checks, some of the language to them was a little vague and suspect. And they felt that now what you're going to do is claim that all these people who cash this check no longer are a part of this litigation, or that this satisfies any settlements. This is what the plaintiffs were alleging in this complaint. So they were asking at the end, they asked that the AME Church be prohibited from sending any further funds to plaintiffs or the punitive class members without a direct written request from the plan participants. B, that the AME Church be required to send a curative letter to plan participants advising them of dependency of this lawsuit, of their options under the plan for distributions, including rollovers and the potential adverse tax consequences of withdrawing funds from the plan. And three, that negotiating the checks that AME Church already sent will not result in a release of claims or damages in this lawsuit. That all checks that have not been requested and that have not been negotiated be voided by the AME Church within 3 days of the entry of each of such an order, and that the AME Church be required to invest and maintain all funds reflected in the unrequested checks in accordance with the terms of the plan, and the AME Church fiduciary obligations to the plaintiffs and the punitive class, and any and all relief the court deems equitable and just. So essentially, they were trying to get a preliminary injunction. Mind you, this was back in July. So there was a response from the AME Church, who basically disagreed that they had any ill intent. They weren't trying to in any way prohibit them from participating. So this is their memo in support of their preliminary injunction. The preliminary injunction was eventually denied, but I'll have to tell you why it was denied in a few minutes. So when the AME Church responded, they basically said to the plaintiff's attorney, man, you didn't give me a chance to respond. Because typically what you do is, before you file any of these motions, you request concurrence from the other side. You request that we can come up with some type of an agreement so that we can avoid even having any of these motions. So what the defense said is, hey, well, the AME Church portion of the defense said, there's been a misunderstanding. We basically gave this money because we know some of these retirees have been without funds, and we already said that it wasn't the right amount of money. We were just trying to give them something while we're still investigating because we have all this money missing. And although the AME Church did not respond yet to the complaint, we know that they have a defense where they're also going to counterclaim according to their response. They plan on doing a counterclaim against the old director. So they're going to throw him under the bus. The old director, they're going to try to make him take the fall, which is going to make this case really interesting because I know the old director now he has to protect himself. Because the AME Church said, hey, we were victims too. We're not trying to get anybody in any way, or we're not trying to pull the wool over anybody's eyes. We were victims too. We didn't know that this director was taking this money like this. So we know from the response what one of their defenses is going to be. They're going to counterclaim and basically make this director be fully responsible. That's going to be part of their defense when they respond. So we do have an affidavit of Dr. James Miller. He is the current executive director of the Department of Retirement. Mind you, all of this missing money occurred from the former director, who is also a defendant in this case. So what Dr. Miller provides is that he is the elected executive director of the Department of Retirement Services for the AME Church. So he has the authority to make this declaration on behalf of the AME Church in the above captioned matter. This declaration is based on my own personal knowledge and understanding. He said in September of 2021, the AME Church discovered financial irregularities, with respect to the AME Church Ministerial Retirement Annuity Plan. Accordingly, the AME Church paused all distributions so it could begin a thorough investigation and audit. Then in early 2022, it was decided that the freeze in the annuity plan funds could be lifted so distribution could begin again so long as there was a limitation on how much to distribute from participants' account balances while investigative work remained ongoing. Accordingly, starting in March of 2022, the AME Church Department of Retirement Services began sending checks to participants, which constitute federally required minimum distributions, as well as approved requests for certain types of distributions. On or about December 22nd of 21, Reverend Matthew Ewing disassociated from active ministry and received a packet of information regarding this account, and they attached that. Part of the official process is for participants to fill out forms and determine their distributions. On this form signed January 10th, Reverend Ewing elected to receive a lump sum. That was Exhibit A. After the freeze was lifted, the department commenced processing its backlog of requests. Reverend Ewing's request was one of them. On June 13th of 2022, the AME Church Department of Retirement Service sent Mr. Ewing a letter and check pursuant to this request. The letter's intent was to explain that the forensic audit, which had previously precipitated the quote pause on distributions back in September of 2021, had been completed. So now the audit is completed according to this. The letter further explained that the check constituted the funds Reverend Ewing had requested based on the audit's new adjusted valuation. What the letter meant to explain is that the forensic audit had revealed, among other things, that the annuity plan was not valued at the deceptive, false, and grossly inflated value that Dr. Harris had previously disclosed. So they're saying after their audit, we all know that Dr. Harris, under him, he would give all these elaborate PowerPoint presentations at the conferences and tell people there's millions of dollars in here and we did some great investments and these investments are going to benefit you when you retire. And it turned out those numbers were false. It was an entire lie. Those numbers, of course, on PowerPoints, you can put whatever numbers you want on there. And that's what happened in this case, allegedly. Accordingly, the annuity plan value had been adjusted to its true value as confirmed by the forensic audit. So now, based on what happened with the audit, these were the real numbers, which are obviously way lower than what any of these people expected. The letter explained that Reverend Ewing's check represented the audit-approved portion of the account less than the requisite 20% federal tax withholding because of the election for a lump sum. The letter also attempted to convey that each annuity plan participant's account was in the process of being reconstructed by a retained actuarial firm to determine the exact balance that each annuity plan participant would have allocated to this account as of June 30th, 2021, had all funds been invested with Sumitra instead of the unauthorized investments by Dr. Harris. By reading the letter, AME Church did not intend for the correspondence to be construed as a release or waiver of claims by any participants involved with any litigation against the AME Church, nor was the letter intended to be a settlement offer to resolve any litigation. Rather, the letter and check sent to Reverend Ewing responded to this January 2022 request for a lump sum disbursement now that funds were no longer on hold. Upon learning that these communications, including the letter to Reverend Ewing, had created some questions among recipients, the AME Church drafted a proposed second letter, clarification letter, intended to clarify the original communication that were sent out to annuity plan participants among the distribution checks. The proposed clarification letter explained to annuity plan participants that the AME Church had engaged an outside accounting firm to conduct a thorough investigative audit of the annuity plan after learning of Dr. Harris's illegal conduct. So he goes on and on to say what you guys think it is or what has been portrayed in this request for a preliminary injunction is not what was intended. And he does this under oath. He wasn't trying to do anything that was backhanded. And in fact, his attorney provided that if he would have sought some form of concurrence, we probably could have resolved this. Because I guess there were emails where the attorney responded and said, hey, I think this is something that we can rectify. It seems like a misunderstanding or miscommunication. And that's the reason why this was filed, and it probably could have been avoided. So now we have an order from the court denying the plaintiff's motion for a preliminary injunction. Is for the reasons I stated already. And the court pretty much provides, and we can read that, it's not very long. This multi-district litigation concerns claims related to the administration of the AME Church Employee Retirement Fund. Before this court is a motion for preliminary injunction filed by the plaintiffs, Reverend Pierce Ewing, Reverend Charles R. Jackson, it names all of these different people, Lynette Glenn, power of attorney, blah, blah, blah. Both the AME Church and Sumitra Financial have responded in opposition to plaintiff's motion. The court has set a hearing for August 4th of 2022. On August 3rd, plaintiff filed notice to the court that they are withdrawing their motion for preliminary injunction based on the parties' resolution of the dispute. In light of plaintiff's intention to withdraw their request for injunction relief, the motion for preliminary injunction is denied. So basically, the court denied it because now they were able to come to an agreement that, hey, it was in writing. The AME Church said, we are victims too, and we're not trying to bamboozle you guys. We were just trying to give them some money, and we weren't trying to make this as if you were giving up your claims just because you took this little bit of money that we give you. And we do plan on proceeding in litigation. And in fact, we're going to sue that I think his name is Harris. We're going to sue the former director as well because we feel like we were victims as well. So hopefully this right here clarifies where we are in this case. And again, on August 19th, as I said before, a new complaint was filed because now we have all of these cases together. This is an example of the new complaint that was filed. And it's pretty much has the same allegations, but now they have to put on here that that this is a class action. It has all the parties combined. It's a very, very lengthy complaint because now you have a whole bunch of people all together. But the allegations are pretty much the same. But as you see, there are 157 pages. In our short time, we really don't have time to go through that. So, everyone, what I am waiting for is, now that the amended complaint has been filed, I am waiting eagerly to see what these responses that the defense is going to bring, especially the old director, because it looks like to me the AME Church is going to say it's all his fault. And because the AME Church is going to blame him for it, as if they don't have a duty to oversight, but that's a whole nother situation. Um, I'm pretty sure this former director now is no holds bar. Whatever information he has on where this money went and who helped him as it pertains to this money disappearing, we are all about to find out when these responses come in. So hopefully this helps you guys. I promised I would drop a video giving an update, and I tried to be a woman of my word. If you haven't done so already, please like, please share, please subscribe. I've had many communications via email, DM, and in my comments of my videos from people from the AME Church. I appreciate you. I see you. I am going to stay on this, and I'll be the help to explain it to everyone else as best as I can that aren't as well versed in what's going on in this litigation. And as I said in the beginning, I am not going to let up. We are going to watch, and we are going to witness every step of the way. Every plea that's filed, we will go over. So until next time, thank you so much for watching.